Over the last decade or so, Subaru America has made a lot of changes in their maintenance schedule to try to lower the overall cost of ownership and maintenance costs associated with their vehicles. Have they actually accomplished this task? Have they actually eradicated these costs for owners? Or have they merely shifted and offset them into higher repair costs? That's what we're going to talk about today, so let's get into it. So, right off the bat, two things that Subaru of America has done maintenance-wise to reduce these costs are getting rid of automatic transmission fluid services for their CVT transmission and moving from a timing belt driven engine to a timing chain driven engine. That's where we're going to start on the timing chain versus timing belt. Subaru's most famous series of boxer engine, the EJ series engine, was a timing belt driven engine. Running from the late 80s all the way into the 2010s, it was a very prevalent engine, lots of different iterations of that engine, but all of them were driven with a timing belt. Now, those familiar with timing belt engines know that it is a serviceable item. The timing belt is to be replaced somewhere between 80 and 105,000 miles. I know a lot of you go with the golden rule of 100,000 miles. I have seen people recommend earlier, some that go to 105, but I wouldn't push it much further than that. More so than mileage, age plays a part in that, as the timing belt is a rubberized component and susceptible to heat cycles and to age and to dry rotting. So you have to take that into consideration. So this timing belt service, roughly 100,000 mile service, it is a costly repair. Now, if you are a DIYer, if you watch my videos, if you're pretty confident with a wrench, you can do this replacement yourself for about $300 in parts. Timing belt kit, coolant, and a thermostat is about all you need. Sometimes you might want to go ahead and throw cam and crank seal in there if you have the tools to do so. But you're looking at about $300 to do this service yourself. Now, most of you are probably not that handy with a wrench and aren't going to tackle that kind of repair. You're likely going to take it to the dealership, take it to an independent repair shop. You're going to be looking at $1,000 plus for that same repair when factoring in the labor cost and just the markup of the parts from that shop. So, most people are like, wow, I don't want to really pay $1,000 plus every 100,000 miles to own this vehicle. That's a cost I'd like to see eliminated. So Subaru tried to do that. Well, they didn't try, they actually succeeded in doing that by going to a timing chain driven engine. Now, the difference is these timing chains do not have a set replacement interval. They are ruled as a quote unquote lifetime part, which, as far as I can tell from looking at documents, Subaru rates that at about 300,000 miles of wear use as a lifetime for the timing set. Now, do they always get to 300,000 miles without issue? Absolutely not. Any mechanical component is susceptible to any kind of failure. You can have issues with the timing chain guides, with the timing chain tensioners. There's issues that can arise with this system, just the same as the timing belt system, with the rubberized belt getting weak and breaking if you leave it on for too long, idlers locking up or breaking down, and tensioners failing on the timing belt system. So you have issues to worry about with either system. Now, a quick way to tell the difference between timing chain engines and timing belt engines. The front of the EJ series engine has a plastic cover over the timing belt, whereas the timing chain FAFB series engine has an aluminum timing chain cover. And that's because engine oil circulates on the chain and in the front of the engine, and you have to seal this to keep the engine oil from leaking. Now, on the front of the EJ series with the belt is dry. It does not require any kind of oiling, and it's actually detrimental to get any kind of fluid on it. The only real place you have to worry about an oil leak on the front of an EJ series engine is at the camshaft seals, which will be 2 or 4, depending on if it's a single or dual overhead cam engine, the crankshaft seal, and the oil pump, the outer perimeter of the oil pump where it bolts to the front of the engine block. That's your main areas of concern for oil leaks on the EJ series engine. Now with the FA and FB series engine, you have a humongous amount of surface area around this timing chain cover to worry about springing leaks. And with that, you have a higher repair cost in the labor to pull this cover off and reseal it. Whereas with an EJ series, it's not quite as intensive to go in there and put a cam seal, a crank seal on, or reseal an oil pump. So as I mentioned earlier, the average timing belt replacement on an EJ series engine is around the ballpark of $1,000. So say you have an issue with your FA, FB series engine with the timing chain. Say you've got a bad tensioner. Say you've got a rattling timing chain guide. How much would it cost the dealership or independent repair shop to go inside of this engine, unseal the timing cover, replace the components of the timing chain system that has failed or faulted, and then reseal this cover? Well, just to go in this cover, clean everything up, and reseal it without parts of what's inside, you're looking at $800 to $1,000 or more depending on the area you're in. So do we really fix anything by doing this? We actually made the engine more complex and less serviceable, less friendly for people to service themselves. So the question remains, did Subaru actually eliminate the cost of the timing belt service by going timing chain? And the short answer is no. All they did was offset it. This could have an issue and cost the same as a timing belt replacement, and it's a mystery when it's going to spring itself upon you. With the timing belt, you knew a 100,000 mile interval you were going to have to pay this, and you could plan for it in advance. So no, it's not really an improvement. You've made the system more complex, less serviceable, friendly to the owner, and you've increased the labor cost of working on this engine. So while we're on the subject of the timing chain cover, let's talk about oil leaks. One of the big Achilles heels of the FA FB series engine is oil leaks. These things seem to leak a lot more than the EJs did, and the labor cost associated with fixing this leaks is exponentially higher. So with the EJ series engine, as we said before, front of the engine, there were very minimal areas to have leaks. Camshaft seals, crankshaft seals, or the oil pump housing. Along with that, you'd have to worry about the rear main seal, the oil pan gasket, which was RTV silicone, the rocker covers or cam covers, and on the single overhead cam, the cam carriers, which really wasn't an issue on the EJ's springing leaks. Now with the FA/FB series engine, you have just miles of surface area to seal with RTV silicone to hold in engine oil leaks. If you don't properly service your PCV system, you are going to develop oil leaks, and it is going to cost you more to fix in this engine than the older engine. You have the entire front timing chain cover. You have the cam covers. You have the cam carriers, which are pretty known for leaking. You have to worry about a two-piece oil pan now. Instead of one bead of silicone on a steel pan, you have to worry about a steel pan and an upper aluminum pan, so twice the surface area to leak oil. You also have to worry about oil leaks on the timing cover itself around VVT components and your oil pressure switches because the oil pump is actually made into the front cover. I know Subaru has always been the butt of the joke when it comes to oil leaks, but looking at the EA series engine, the EJ series engine, and the F series engine, the F series engine hands down has more oil leaking issues than the previous engines. So now that we've talked about the timing belt versus timing chain, let's go ahead and get into transmissions. The automatic transmission, the Subaru CVT, a hot topic for anyone talking about Subarus in the last 10 years or so. So Subaru of America has changed the maintenance schedule. That was always 3-year, 36,000 mile for a drain refill on the automatic transmission fluid. Subaru now says that the CVT fluid is a lifetime fluid and never has to be touched, never has to be replaced, and it is a non-serviceable item. Well, this is absolutely not true. Subaru Japan still does 3-year, 36,000 mile drain and refills on their CVT, and as far as I've heard from Canadian viewers, Subaru of Canada is kind of hit and miss. They kind of stretch out the service interval, but they don't say it's a lifetime fluid. So why is this important? Well, a lot of people have talked about the issues with their CVT transmission past 100,000 miles, the failure rate of them, and the issues associated with owning them, and the high cost of replacing that transmission when it fails. So say you have a CVT, you're past the 100,000 mile warranty on it, and you have a failure or something catastrophic happens and Subaru says we need to replace it. You're going to get a reman unit from Subaru, and that is going to cost you between $6,500 and $10,000 from estimates I've gotten from viewers over the last several years. So not a cheap thing to replace after only 100,000 miles. Now, on the other hand, changing your transmission fluid, replacing that CVT fluid, that stuff that breaks down with heat and age, that Subaru says doesn't need to be replaced because it's costly to replace it. So CVT fluid is quite expensive. If I'm going to do a replacement myself, at my cost, it's about $250 in fluid alone. If you take it to the dealership, ballpark pricing for the fluid and labor, you're looking at between $350, $500 probably at the maximum. So 3-year, 36,000 miles, $350 to $500. In 100,000 miles of driving, you're looking at the high end, $1,500 worth of transmission services. So what's the better deal here? Do you shell out $1,500 to service your transmission over 100,000 miles and continue to get reliable service out of it? Or do you not service it and neglect it for 100,000 miles and then pay $6,500 to $10,000 to replace it when it fails? Seems like a no-brainer to me. I'm going to replace that fluid and service that car. I don't care about the increased maintenance cost or cost of ownership, because when it fails, the cost of repair is exponentially higher. So what are you actually saving here? So guys, what do you think about this? Let me know in the comments below your thoughts. I think personally, Subaru has done this in an effort to entice people to come lease new vehicles. Leasees normally are not worried about much more than putting gas in the car, changing the oil on occasion, and driving it. They're not worried about paying out all these maintenance costs for a vehicle that they're only going to have for 2 or 3 years and then turn back in and never see again. They don't care if it falls apart after they're done with it. This could be a double-edged sword in that when these cars are turned back in and sold as used vehicles, the people that buy them are only going to get a few years out of them before one of these big major repair bills comes up and they decide, am I going to pay to fix this car, or am I going to sell it or trade it in and get something else? It seems to me this could be looked at as some shady business, but I'm not going to put that on Subaru. I'm not insinuating that. It's just, if you look at the data, that could be one way of interpreting it. How do you interpret it? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.